Committee of the Whole meeting for January 19th, 2016. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Ahrens? Here. Kammerer?
Here.
Carbonaro?
Here.
Daney?
Here.
Hopkins?
Here.
Ranky?
Here.
Give me a couple seconds here to get situated. Making me tired standing up over there. Thanks, Chief. Thank you, Scott. I have to say it's kind of nice to need extra room for extra chairs in here. Sometimes it gets a little lonely. So. Moving on with the Committee of the Whole meeting this evening, we have a couple of items on the Planning and Zoning Committee. Chairman Ranky.
Thank you, Mr. President. Why don't we start out with the Sunset Hill Farm concept plan. What I'd like to do is have Jim start us off with a brief introduction, and then I have a number of questions for the developer, and I'm sure the rest of us have a number of questions too. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Plonzinski.
Thank you, Trustee Ranky. As you have heard, Sunset Hill Farms is what many people know as the horse farm there on Munger and Sayre Road. Pulte Homes has a contract, and they have submitted a concept plan. And just so for the audience, the conceptual plan is for the developer to gauge input and direction from the village board prior to submitting any full application or not. They have not submitted any rezoning requests or anything. They are just showing this concept as something that they would propose to build. They are proposing on the 35 acres, 77 lots. The property is currently in unincorporated Cook and in unincorporated DuPage County. They are proposing an age-targeted community consisting of ranch and Cape Cod homes, and they use the term maintenance-free living, where the homeowners association would maintain the yards, the open space, plow the driveways, and the sidewalks for the residents. Just currently, we have a similar community in Villa Olivia and Bartlett on the Green. This is similar to what Pulte has in their Del Webb subdivision in Elgin. As stated, and you've heard from the residents, the minimum lot size is 7,800 square feet, closely matching our SR4 lot size of 6,000 minimum. If they did proceed with a full application, they would ask for rezoning to the SR4 with a PUD overlay, as they are asking for some bulk regulation changes from our normal SR4, particularly a rear yard setback of 25 feet rather than the 40. They are also, if they submit a full application, the road right-of-way would be reduced to 60 feet. The road surface would stay the same, as well the sidewalks. The entrance is off of Naperville Road, as you can see right here, and that's in the area where Naperville comes off of Munger and then transitions into Sayre. They are proposing some multi-purpose trails throughout the development and have proposed a park site of almost 3 acres in size. Their impervious calculations, as mentioned, they are going to ask for some relief on that. Stormwater detention would be required, as well as a traffic study. As the residents have pointed out, the comprehensive plan for this area is estate residential. That is why with this concept we suggested that Pulte do apply for a concept, because your comprehensive plan shows this as a lower density estate residential. That's the sum and substance of it. I can just go quickly through the proposed elevations. They are having basically 5 models and 5 versions of each model. And again, they're ranging from 1,600, I think, to 2,700 square feet in size. And they are tending to characterize it as ranch style and empty nester living. With that, we have Peter Tremulis from the developer, as well as his engineer from CENCON.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Peter Tremulous. I'm Vice President of Land for Pulte Homes. Our offices are located in Schaumburg, Illinois. We have before you this evening it is a beautiful property. It's really part of the last remaining open space within the village. Our proposal is to develop a portion of the property, the most northwesterly portion of the property as well as the most southerly portion of the property for Sunset Hill. It comprises about 35 acres of the overall property, and our intent is to offer a community for empty nesters that would like to have the lawns maintained by the association, the walks shoveled by the association, and driveways plowed by an association. So part of that, the purpose of that is we're kind of looking for a consumer who's probably an empty nester and may have more than one home, and either in Illinois or maybe Florida or Arizona. And this would be kind of their summer home, and then their winter home might be out of state. That's becoming a trend for pre-retirees and retirees where their principal residence sometimes is outside of Illinois for tax purposes and other reasons like that, but where they have children that reside in the local community and they still desire to have a residence in the local community to get together with their families. We're building homes of this exact style and model up in Hawthorne Woods at our Hawthorne Hills development. And we'd welcome any of you to come up and take a look at that development. We also offer a range of other homes in Hawthorne Hills, but it would give you an idea of what the homes look like and how they live based upon their floor plan and general layout. Each of the homes has a proposed optional second floor, which adds the square footage that is towards the upper range. So the second floors range anywhere from about 600 square feet to about 800 square feet of additional living space. Based upon the sales in our other communities, including the Del Webb community where we also offer these homes, 60 to 65% take the second floor. So it does tend to increase the overall size of the home and have a positive impact on taxes in general. We're here tonight only on concept plan review, so in order to make a formal submission for a preliminary plan, there's a considerable amount of more work that would need to be done, including more detailed grading analysis, a tree survey, which previously was done, I believe, by the Havlicek firm out of St. Charles. We're still looking to see if we can locate a copy of that so we can get into some of the details on the trees on the property. The site does have a tremendous amount of topography on it. It's about 65 feet from its highest point on the portion of the site that we're working on to its lowest point on the site. So you might imagine the grading transition does represent a little bit of an issue for grading the property, but we do have some concept plans that we're comfortable with in terms of how we could grade it out to offer both a ranch-style living on a standard foundation as well as on a lookout or a walkout foundation. So generally the high point of the property is towards the east and the low point of the property is towards the west on Munger Road. The southerly acreage that's in the DuPage County portion of the site is heavily treed. We are proposing a buffer around the south and north portion of that southerly portion of the property. And there are some trees that could be saved in that area, but they would be within the area that would be maintained by our homeowners association. But drainage generally is from east to west towards open space or Munger Road. So from a drainage perspective, we don't expect to have any impact on adjoining properties. There are some concerns about depth of groundwater out here for some of the county residents, and we did have an interesting discussion about how deep their wells are and the quality of the water that's out there. Some of the wells are 500 feet or more for a single-family home, so that's quite deep for a single-family residence generally. And this would be on public water supply, and we do think that in a general sense that it should have a very little or no negative impact on the groundwater conditions that are out there today. We are also looking at kind of unique ways to provide infiltration back into the groundwater supply that's out there today through potentially pervious stormwater basins. There's a considerable amount of gravel and sand, as you might imagine, based upon the amount of mining that's been going on towards the west of this property. Some of those subsurface conditions do exist on the property as well, especially where we're proposing stormwater basins. So we think there's an opportunity, working with your Public Works Department and your civil engineering consultants, to come up with a way to potentially add clean stormwater runoff back into the groundwater supply that's out there today. We have, in fact, had a meeting with the Park District. We invited them out to walk the property with us, which we were able to accomplish a little over 10 days ago, and show them the proposed park site. We also did have the opportunity of Mr. Litchfield join us on that walk and introduce himself to the Park District. Probably isn't necessary. He's been out here for many, many years. But there is an opportunity, and the Park District is looking potentially next month at one of their long-range planning sessions at the balance of the property, potentially for space preservation and park activities. We'll see how that goes, but it's not part of the discussion this evening or an impact on the plan, but I want to make sure that we're sharing with you what we've done up to this point. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, I feel like I'm coming to this a little bit late. The first I heard about the concept was from an angry resident. So I got their packet before I got this packet. So I have a great deal of questions for you. I think as a concept that it's too dense. I think the density in both of the lots or the parcels is it's inconsistent with the surrounding uses. I don't see the need to amend the comp plan just because we want to amend the comp plan. I do development work, so I get the economics of this. I think the drainage seems like it's an issue. The impervious surface, I'm not going to vote for a variance on an impervious surface. And obviously, I'm concerned about the trees. It sounds like you're making some effort to at least survey the trees. Do you anticipate changing the plans at all to incorporate more of the older?
Yeah, if we can. Tonight is really just a concept plan.
Right, but I'm asking you conceptually.
We're open to hear from you what your thoughts are and what you think the best use of the property is, and whether or not our proposal might be something that could fit within the village's decision-making and long-range planning. I think, right now we're targeting a consumer that we believe is underserved in the municipality. And, of course, there are ranch homes that they can buy, but they're very outdated. Very little history provided with the new supply with the new plan, which is better than some of the homes that were built 15, 20, 25 years ago. So we're finding a lot of reception here.
Scott.
Oh, okay. Got it. Sorry about that. Might have leaned against the wrong thing there.
Well, that's actually a great point. Have you considered not connecting Litchfield to the south?
Well, we did. In fact, we're looking to develop the property in two phases. Part of the challenge in doing that is we might need, if we were not to make a connection to Litchfield Lane, your village ordinances have requirements in there for a minimum, or I should say a maximum length of a cul-de-sac. So, and in fact, the early plan that we had done back in November, which had, I think, 87 lots on it, did have a couple of cul-de-sacs on it, and we were advised that cul-de-sacs are not permitted in Bartlett, and we were required or advised that if we were going to have a cul-de-sac, it would be on a private street, would not be plowed or maintained by the village. So we removed those, and as part of the revision to this plan, we took the cul-de-sacs out and have just a continuous street system within the overall plan. If we were to not make a connection to the south, it would be one cul-de-sac, and I think it would change the review from both police and perhaps the fire department as well, because I think the maximum length of a cul-de-sac in the village is about 600 feet. by code.
Jim, what are your thoughts on cul-de-sacs?
In this particular instance, there was an ideal situation to, as they had this loop here, they showed two cul-de-sacs, and as we looked at it, we felt that it was better if you were going to loop those, rather, because it's for snow plowing purposes, better continuity in the road system. So we advised them to make that connection for that area, since they were so close together. And on this south end, as this Litchfield Woods Road already does tie into this end of this property line, and again, our subdivision ordinance and our street pattern requires the continuation of the road system, again, for emergency purposes, ease of plowing, that type of thing. Personally, cul-de-sacs, if they're in a good area and designed properly, they're okay. But in this instance, they were close together, and it's easier to just loop it, again, for safety and plowing the snow.
Okay. And in terms of, obviously you've heard resident concerns about transition. What, if anything, are your thoughts on changing the transitions?
Well, we build many subdivisions, and as long as it's single-family detached to single-family detached, we don't necessarily believe that there's a necessity to do other types of transitions in there.
Okay.
My personal opinion is a variety of homes within a neighborhood is a desirable thing, and again, I think this serves a different consumer than who's living south of the property on Litchfield Lane. You know, it's a approach that we think does work, and we don't necessarily do that. Generally, our transitioning in a land plan is generally from retail to residential, or where you might, you know, introduce a multifamily use between a retail use and a single-family use. That's the kind of transition that we're probably more accustomed to. But when it's single-family to single-family, we generally don't transition. So even if you come up to Hawthorne Woods, I think you'll see that we have 4 neighborhoods in there, everything from 91, I would say about 13,000 square foot down to 5,600 square foot lots. So you can take a look at that community, and that's in a neighborhood where they're 1 acre minimum, generally speaking, in their R1 zoning. So it's, again, we're generally looking to densify zoning today to meet a variety of different requirements for, one, addressing the cost of homes, but also to address the minimal amount of land that's available for development. And I think you recall prior to the crash, the general cry was, you know, to avoid urban sprawl. So we're trying to listen to that argument as well, and wherever we can find sites where there's an opportunity to densify the land use and also meet a housing need, we're trying to do that, because land is scarce, especially in locations that are generally considered infill, which this is, and therefore have higher demand for housing because of their proximity to places of employment or shopping. So this particular site is unique from our perspective in that it offers a future resident a very convenient location east of the river within the village of Bartlett and close to employment both on the 90 as well as on the new freeway that's now been built that takes you back towards the airport. So a good
We're sold on Bartlett.
a good 60 to 65% of the potential customers would still work. So, but a good percentage of them would not. So we know there's concerns about traffic on Naperville Road, and part of the preliminary plan application does require a traffic study. So any work that would be done on Naperville Road would be subject to taking a look at a traffic study and see what's warranted for improvements out there.
I think the difference between an SR1 and an SR4 is significant, and I think that cries out for some type of consideration for transition.
What would you suggest?
I think an intermediate lot size. I mean, I don't want to do your job for you, but yeah, I think that's what I'd like to say.
Yeah, we're here for feedback tonight, so
There you go.
feel free to provide as much feedback as you
If I
can.
may,
Happy to hear it.
I have some concerns also. I also agree with Trustee Ranke. on the density that we currently have there, and it was very nice to put SR1, SR4. But I'd really like to know what the rationale was between regarding not specifically looking at some type of buffering from the residents that are currently on there with the zoning that you're proposing here. We have no buffering at all.
Well, there is some buffering along the south property line. In this area.
Yeah.
It's smaller than what most people want.
Yeah.
Granted.
Right.
It is smaller than what most people want, but the idea was to provide some separation between the rear lot line and any neighboring lot to the south. So the area that's proposed between their rear lot line and our rear lot lines would be common area and would be maintained by our homeowners association. So we're sensitive to their concerns. In fact, our first plan did not have any buffering on it, and staff suggested that we include buffering. So we did revise the plan, and we dropped 10 lots and did incorporate buffering along the south property line.
May I ask, how did you pick this parcel of property? I mean, what was the rationale behind that? What was the mindset behind picking this particular parcel?
Well, of course, we've been looking at this property for 20-some-odd years and have known the Litchfields in one capacity or another for that long. When the property became available, we were very interested in trying to do some development on it. It's been available since 2004 on the market, looking for a buyer. Some of the proposals that have come before certainly didn't pan out, but our goal is to try to find a proposal that we do think meets consumer need as well as a market price point that will generate a good velocity of sales for us based upon our business model, our business practices. And we think the site has some tremendous attributes that would be almost ideal for an empty nester. Our pathway systems that we're proposing are, in fact, the number one amenity that a senior home buyer is looking for. Walking is the number one activity that they're looking to try to avail themselves of. This particular site, with the paths that we're proposing, would meet that and maybe exceed their expectation given the interesting topography of the property and the view potential from the proposed park site. You may be aware that the Park District is working on acquiring a rather large percentage of the property to the west that is currently owned by a material company for a large regional park. That, too, would have jogging and walking paths in it as well. So it represents another significant recreational opportunity in close proximity within walking distance of the property. So for an active adult or a age-targeted consumer, we think the location is rapidly developing into an ideal spot for that.
I think the idea that you have with having the homeowners association for this and also being age targeted is a good plan. I just really am having a great deal of difficulty with the conceptual plan as it's being presented this evening. I don't see enough buffering. I'm very concerned about the trees. Again, the density that we had talked about, but we're here this evening and make suggestions.
It's really a concept plan.
Yeah,
that's right.
If I can interject, I want to tell you that I have known the Litchfield family for a long time, and Shirley Litchfield Berg, although not living in Bartlett, has been very active in Bartlett through the Women's Club. Stephen has been very active through Lions Club. These are people that really care about the community.
Looks like trees.
And I want to thank them for that. I don't know if any of you are here, but thank you for what you've done for Bartlett already. This is a large piece of the Sunset Hill Farm, and or
Existing trees.
altogether. I too, when I first looked at it, was a little blown away because of the size of the project. Not having Sunset Hill Farm up there on top of the hill is concerning to me. But I don't own the property, and I don't have to pay their taxes. So obviously, this is something they wish to do with their property. I am as concerned, if not more, than my colleagues here in the density. The density is just, it just doesn't seem to belong because the planning in that area has been for the ER1, SR1 zoning, not SR4 or 5. I too am concerned about the lack of any kind of buffering to the incongruent zoning that would be there. I think you need to do some work on the density, and otherwise, we've dealt with each other for quite some time.
Sure, many years.
And I've never known you to put out a bad product.
Thank you.
And that certainly goes, or should go without saying. But yeah, let's work on that density and the boardroom, and see what we can do with that.
Are there any other comments from any other?
I think, without being repetitious, I think you get the point.
Okay. We appreciate the opportunity this evening to come before you and hear your comments, and we'll continue working with staff and see if we can't address a lot of the concerns that came up this evening.
I'd also encourage you to work with the residents too. I mean, I do think it was nice, even though I didn't.
No question. No.
Well, let me finish.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't know about it, it was nice that you reached out to the folks and had that forum at Bartlett Hills. But I think that's a good process, especially if you're trying to fit 4 pounds of potatoes in a 1 pound bag.
Sure. We'd be happy to do meetings, and we've offered to meet with the residents individually for anyone who is concerned about adjacency with their existing homes. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I would just quickly reiterate a couple of the things that were pointed out, and I think the thing we're getting here is density. I don't think it's a good idea for the impervious surface problem we're going to have out there. And just one thing that my fellow colleagues here haven't mentioned is, the vast majority of the trees we're talking about is in the southern portion here. I think that there's more ability to work on the Munger-Sayer Road corner, where you've got, your buffer isn't going to be as difficult with the homeowners back there because you've got more room to work with, right? So, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing some type of a, like one of the trustees had brought up, some type of a concept where we do consider less density in the Munger-Sayer Road area and some type of a cul-de-sac down there. I mean, maybe that's an idea where you could take that north portion, and I think it's really hard-pressed to get rid of all. You're going to be fighting an uphill battle, like the one resident said, with all of these oak trees down here. That's a really, really beautiful area. But I would love to see some kind of a split here, compromise type of a thing.
Yeah, we are looking at a variety of different concepts for the property. So it's interesting when you look at this plan in 2 dimensions. It looks pretty nice. When you start looking at it in 3 dimensions, given retaining walls and other grading techniques that we would need to look at, it becomes a little more complicated, frankly. So we have looked at reducing the density and eliminating retaining walls to try to make the site look like it's more in its natural state. And surprisingly, by dropping some lots and therefore retaining walls, the economics actually maintain or get better. So we've looked at that. SEMCON is helping us kind of understand what options are available to do that. In the process of looking at that, we'd like to bring back some more work for you guys to look at another date in this same format before we go much farther, because we think concept plan is the right place to kind of iron out some of these issues before assuming anything, frankly. So.
Yeah, and I would highly suggest, as Trustee Ranke said, to work with the residents. And before we end this session, I want to thank all of you for coming out. This is what it means to be a resident here, to get involved and get plugged in. And it's really important that we hear that feedback. I think everybody kind of agrees that this is kind of jam a square peg into a round hole right now. I think even the developer kind of gets that there's going to be some things that need to go on here. But I think that there will be a happy medium here where this is an area that will be developed at some point. It's just a matter of what it looks like. And I think we can all make sure that we're happy with what it looks like in the end. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on planning and zoning is the Ashton Gardens concept plan. Jim?
Thank you, Trustee Ranke. We have with us from Ashton Gardens, we have Brad Schreiber, president of Ashton Gardens, and his engineer, I believe, or somebody with him, I'm sorry. The property is at the southwest corner of Devon and Prospect Avenue, and many of you are familiar with the property because it's been zoned business and it's been vacant for going on 20 years, if not longer.
Longer than that, Jim.
Longer
I've
than
been walking by there for a long time.
I've been in town 25 years. It's been vacant that entire time.
It's a concept plan again. The concept in this case for the 3.8 acre property is for really what amounts to wedding, chapel, reception area, parking, and the office for their facility. They currently own and operate facilities in Georgia and in Texas. Generally, the concept plan shows the Devon Avenue access for the main entrance, the reception area just to the right as you come in, chapel to the south, parking on the Prospect Avenue area with the office in the far south end. This would require a reduction if they proceed to the formal PUD process in the number of parking spaces. The site, generally, the office is 4, chapel is 61, reception hall is 94, and there's a normal requirement of the zoning ordinance would be for 164 places, parking spaces. The concept has 142. Generally, the chapel and the reception area are not operated at the same time, so if they come in, they would believe they can park with this reduced amount. There's landscape areas around the perimeter. The proposed elevation of the facility, nicely looking design on the reception area, and then just some photos of the chapel that they currently have. Good looking building, nice facility with banquet hall, rugs, carpet, nice foyers, and I heard their food's great. It can hold up to, I think, 250 people. And Mr. Schreiber is here if you have any questions. Obviously, if they proceed on further, they would have to meet our stormwater requirements, landscaping, and all those other requirements.
I do have a question I'd like to ask staff or the petitioner. The concern I have, the one thing that popped out immediately was the amount of parking, and we're talking about a reduction in the amount of parking. Really, I don't have a problem with that if you can answer it. What would you do with overflow parking? If you has anybody considered or thought about what would happen?
Thank you. Brad Schreiber, president of Ashton Gardens. Thanks for having us here tonight. Just to get right to the question, there isn't an answer to that. We haven't needed overflow parking at any of our other facilities. As Jim addressed, the capacity of the reception building is really the maximum capacity of the number of guests, the number of people that would be on the property, as the chapel and reception building are not used at the same time. Guests that would attend a ceremony in the chapel would then move over to the reception building, and one would not occur, they wouldn't occur simultaneously. We couldn't have a ceremony and a reception going on at the same time, because the guests in a reception building would have to have come from the ceremony, from the ceremony in the chapel, and those that would be in the chapel at that time would have nowhere to go afterwards. So the parking is really based on the capacity of the reception building, which is the higher capacity of the two.
And nobody goes to a wedding alone, right? You know that.
But even if there was,
Some leave alone, not many show up alone.
even if there was an overflow, Ray, I think maybe they could work out a deal with Bartlett Plaza that's got a pretty
Yeah, we'll run a shuttle bus.
shuttle. Exactly. Why couldn't they do something like that?
Typically, based on your history, how many could you accommodate in the reception area?
The reception building is designed to hold a maximum of 300.
300. Well, actually, now that I'm looking at it a little closer, if we have 164 places, if two people are in a car, that's 328 people. So
That's our maximum. Typically, the average number, and it holds true and we have some facilities that hold 400. Our average capacity is just over 140, in the 145 range. Boy, we'd love to do 300 or 400 every time. It just doesn't work that way. So maybe it'd be different here. We hope it is. But rarely do we see that. And based on automobile occupancy, guests that arrive, out-of-town guests that arrive in hotel shuttles, et cetera, that number seems to work for us.
Well, one of the things we obviously want to be concerned about, and I think you've taken into consideration, is the setback around the property and buffering for the residents. But Jim, can you speak on that a little bit more as to how much distance the building and the business would have from the actual property owners that surround this? Because I know we want to be sensitive to that. However,
with this development, and being experienced in other previous projects we've had on this site, we did recommend the 20-foot landscape buffer around the perimeter. And then in addition, you've got a couple, you probably have, in this instance, you've got 20, probably another 20, you've probably got 40 feet to the property line, and then the home you're looking at probably, 80 feet to the backs of these homes. On this side, the chapel, you've got 20, and then, again, these homes here, you're probably looking at 60 feet to the backs of these homes. We were sensitive also on this side, not having this loading area. The fire department wanted access here. They created a driveway through there, which provides another distance. They're going to try to maintain some of these trees, but again, they've got an extensive landscaping plan that they will provide around the perimeter. So,
and around that, is that a bermed landscaping perimeter or not?
Right now, I don't think it's designed as a berm, Brad.
It's not. It's whatever the village would require according to your code.
Primarily, it's just it's grass and trees.
I think a berm is a good idea because we're going to hear from the residents.
I was going to ask that.
They are putting up a fence also.
What's the name of the association there, Jim?
Pardon?
It's an association behind there. What is it called?
Point Estates.
And then it's an association. They have an association in there.
I never dealt with them.
I thought that they did.
They do.
Oh, it's not active any longer?
I know that they have complained about other developments in proximity.
Is there any residents here right now from? Okay. Okay. It was at one point, I think, right? There was an association there at one point.
The first
There
couple,
probably was when they first formed it.
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Okay.
May I ask the resident a question?
Yeah.
Do you live on the south of the? Okay. So there's no, you don't have a fence back there, correct? Yeah, and that's one of the things that we would also offer is that we would construct a fence, obviously just across on our property line for privacy for all of the residents on that side as well. You would want it and we would want it. Well, if we built it, it would have to be on our property, like that far on our property, like a foot over the property line. And it would be what's typical, 8 foot.
Would be 8 foot is allowed for that.
Yeah, whatever would be allowed. So, you know, we don't want to run on your property any more than you want to run on ours. So,
Do you belong to the Chamber of Commerce?
I'm sorry.
Do you belong to the Chamber of Commerce?
In every other municipality we're in, we do.
You would change you would join this chamber?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
How many locations do you have total?
4 currently, and
4?
With this one, I'll count this one as well. We'll have 3 more that are going to be under construction this year.
Chicago area or? In
No, this
Texas,
is our
or?
first kind of branching into out of the southwestern region, if you will.
I say, yeah.
We have 2 in Houston, 1 in the Dallas market, 1 in the Atlanta market. Our second Atlanta area starting within the next 60 days. And we're looking at outside of Austin, Texas. And, you know, we were looking at the D.C. area, but really love the Chicago market and really love we stay on the outskirts of the major cities for this very reason. And we get to work with Roberta and Jim and their counterparts in the other, the other cities and municipalities because we love the response we get. It's quick, it's helpful, we get great guidance. If we were to go into Chicago or Austin or Houston or Dallas, it would take forever and we'd get lost in the shuffle, and we just enjoy, the neighbors are a lot friendlier.
Well, let me ask you, why Bartlett?
What was that? Yeah, we love the weather. I canceled a tea time for this afternoon, by the way, in Houston. It was 70 degrees.
Well, at least we can golf in July here, and you can't do that in Texas.
Yeah. Well,
Unless you get up at 5 in the morning.
Well, yeah, and we do start early there. But you're right about that. I'll try to keep it short. In looking at the Chicago area, we knew we wanted to stay in the suburbs, out of the city. Land costs, as I just mentioned, just the hassle of building and getting through the process. And we looked at we kind of narrowed it down. We wanted to be north of, is it, God, I apologize, is it Naperville that's further south?
Yeah.
Okay, north of there. Didn't want to go too far northeast. Land costs get really high. And in this area, we're a destination, wherever we go, we're a destination wedding facility. So people, we're very high end, we're pretty classy. The food is great, by the way. And y'all will find out as soon as we get going. So the access from Chicago itself, north of Chicago and south in this area was, we wanted to be right in this vicinity. We started looking at land and access, and it just sort of met the bill. We found this piece of property. It's really barely big enough for ours, but it works. We like where we are geographically to the market, and we really love the density and the demographics of the suburbs of Chicago. We get lost in the city if we tried to go into the city.
I'll tell you that
You're a destination business that people will go out of their way to come to, and that's what we need in the downtown Bartlett area.
Yeah,
But I think that's great, although I still am obviously concerned about residents and
Yeah.
making sure that their needs are considered as well.
and I'll be happy to address some of those. And here are the questions we get. The first one is noise. What happens late at night, and what's the effect on the residents late at night? Number one, we don't do any outside events. There's no place to get married outside, have a reception outside, do any of that. The amount we spend on the building and everything else, we just assume you be inside and enjoy it. So everything takes place inside. There are, in fact, at two of our other locations, fireworks are allowed by the city or by the village, and we don't, simply because of that. You can get a permit, and from the city, for example, north of Dallas in Corinth, Texas, you can get a fireworks permit, and we just won't allow it because of the disturbance on the neighbors. Doesn't bother us whatsoever, but the neighbors don't like it, and we committed to them that we just wouldn't do it. We also we employ off-duty local police to manage traffic, to manage the events itself, and in the over 1 million guests we've served since we opened our first property over 10 years ago, we have not had a single alcohol-related incident. Our
Chief,
staff.
did you write that down? We're going to make sure we check up on that.
Yeah. Yeah, if I can give you the name of our director of security in Texas, he's a sergeant with the Houston Police Department. Our training of alcohol service and awareness and managing is even higher than what's required by the state of Texas and the state of Georgia for now. So we just don't. And it's just risky. It's risky for everybody to do that. So you're not going to have a bunch of drunks, or any drunks for that matter, yelling, getting out of hand in the parking lot. If you do, it doesn't last very long because we watch that pretty closely.
And does that mean you have security on site?
Off-duty policemen are required to be hired by every event, arriving before the event and staying till after the event.
Very good to know.
Yeah. Other than that, that's really that's really the main question we get from the residents. If there's more, we're happy to address it. We always learn something new.
I just wanted to make one more comment. The way the concept plan's presented, I wouldn't have any objection if you move forward with this. And I think that this should be something that really could earmark our downtown area and try and improve the downtown area just by bringing out other people from other communities into our village. So I wouldn't have any problem moving forward with this.
Thank you. We attract, in this location, we conservatively about 40,000 people a year that will come for either tours or to attend events that typically wouldn't come to this area. If there's restaurants, hotels, gas stations, et cetera, are going to be used, we hire, as I mentioned, off-duty police for all of our events. We suspect we'll do upwards of 200 events a year here, is our hope, is our goal. Other local small businesses, photographers, bakers, cakes. Yeah, cakes. Florists, linen companies, other things like that. We use local stores for hardware, groceries, et cetera. So, we think that there's quite a bit of more exposure that we hope to offer as well.
Jim, many years ago, that corner's, I know it's been vacant forever, and we were talking about it this evening.
31.
The Plan Commission, they had somebody that came before us at one time, before the Plan Commission. What was that for? I can't remember. Do you remember that?
It was a strip shopping center.
It was a strip shopping center?
On it a number
I
of
didn't
years
remember.
ago. And subsequent reiteration to that never went forward.
Right.
Mr. Schreiber, considering the city of Corinth has quoted you as being a model corporate citizen, I think that speaks for itself. However, the only problem I have with your design is that the bakery is not included in that little corner, which I think would be.
Yeah, I would advise, if anyone's thinking about getting into the bakery business, I'd advise against it. That's a little personal joke there we go.
Well, one last thing, and I think that the residents that live in the area are used to those roadways being the way that they are, and they're used to that property being not being utilized. So when you say you're going to bring 40,000 people in, I'm assuming that we're going to do a traffic study and we're going to understand how that's going to impair flow. There's a school right down Prospect, and we want to make sure people aren't cutting through the school speed zone.
Yeah, great question. As far as traffic goes, our business occurs after 5 o'clock on Fridays through Sunday evenings.
Not very many weekday events.
We just wish there were, but there really isn't. We get some, but almost an immeasurable percentage of our business, maybe 5% maybe. That's gravy for us. But typically, events will start after 5 o'clock, usually around 7 o'clock on Fridays. Go through the weekends, and on our busiest weekend, we'll have 2 events. If we're really lucky, we'll squeeze another small one in there somewhere, but 2 events, and they're many hours apart. They're 4 or 5 hours apart. And if we're talking about 150, 60 cars max, over that period, you can see how little impact it'll have, and it is not during the busier times. Any of our guests that come for tours or visitations are to visit the properties typically before 5 o'clock. I mean, our business hours are till 7 on weekdays, and we just most of the time hope people would come see us that late. So the effect on the traffic is really minimal.
Well, it'll still be an impact. You've got 31. You have 3 events on average every weekend to start out. 52 weeks, 150 people. Even if it's that small of an event, that's 31,000 people a year. So you're going to have about 15,000 extra cars through there, which is good for the businesses.
Right.
The only question I would have is Paul here. Probably not, huh? I think as you progress, and I don't want to prohibit you from doing so, but we're going to always ask this question, how it's going to be competing with our own venue, right? We have our own venue that we just expanded, so some people are going to say, okay, this doesn't make much sense to kind of get this thing moving when we just expanded our own venue. So I think I would like to hear a little bit about how you're advertising. Is there an opportunity for us to get overflow because you're advertising so heavily? Will we get more business out there because of the fact that some people are going to look at your place and they're going to look at our place and they're going to say, hey, this is better for us and this is better for us?
Yep.
So,
Well, after we cannibalize everything we can from you guys, just kidding.
and the advertising is probably where
Yeah.
you get the most benefit, I believe.
Yep, we take, there is opportunity, by the way, for overflow. We do, people, and we wish there was a hotel closer to us for a lot of
You
reasons.
can build one. We can probably find a place for you.
I used to be in the business. I'll be happy to consult for $0 to get one.
Go up.
It benefits us as well. But our advertising is pretty limited because there's typically brides wherever they are. There's 2, maximum 3 in a marketplace as they go. There's this website and magazine called The Knot, Knot. We spend a ton of money with those guys because it's all online searching. The magazines, people get, but they don't look at them. Everything's online these days. So we use SEO. We invest in Google search advertising, online advertising, that sort of thing. The Knot and Wedding Wire are the 2 major search spots for them. So we spend our money there. Now, as far as referral business goes, after we sell a Saturday night on a particular weekend, we're done.
People coming in.
So there is a lot of opportunity.
And I think that would be a vice versa relationship.
Yeah, and it works well. In fact, we have it's a real competitive market for us in where we are in the North Dallas location, and we have a deal with our with each other.
Your place, is it by Highland Village, Flower Mound area?
It's in Corinth. It's just south of Denton,
Yeah.
off of 35.
Yeah, I knew I saw that name.
Yeah. So we refer to, even in competition, we refer to each other, and we certainly would, and also for rehearsal dinners as well. When a bride books with us, the questions go, where do we have rehearsal dinners, where do we stay, things of that sort. So we certainly be.
If you haven't looked, we have Chinese, we have Mexican, we have Italian, and we have American food right downtown by you. So.
Well, I don't know that yet, but I'm sure with all the visits I'll be making, I'll get to learn all about your restaurants.
Thank you.
That's another question. I mean, if you're just going to be doing the banquets on the weekends, are you going to be open for general dinner Monday through Friday?
No, we don't do a la carte. We get people off during the week, yeah.
I have one last thing I need to ask you. Have you given any consideration to a drive-through chapel?
Vegas? Come on, Ray.
It says right here, Ray, it's high-end weddings.
Hey, I got married in Vegas.
I couldn't pass on that, sorry.
We'll let you wear the Elvis suit if you want to, Ray.
Why not? We have a drive-through laundromat.
Right.
Is that all we have?
Other questions?
Sir.
I do believe so.
Terrific. Then we'll
Chairman.
move this along to the Plan Commission.
Yeah. Thank you for coming in and answering our questions.
Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
It's a concept.
And I would also make just one last comment. If you wouldn't mind reaching out to these residents, I think that would be really beneficial for you as well. That way, when we get down the road here, some more questions have been answered before we get in this venue.
Yeah, I tell you what we love to do, and when it comes time, and I apologize, I don't know exactly in the process. We send the letters out and communicate with them about, I guess, one of the public hearings, perhaps in the future. And for all you residents that live right by us, we usually find a nice local restaurant and spring for food and drinks and talk about the concept and answer questions before it comes to public. So we already know the answer before the question, and if it doesn't go well, we just don't show up.
That's Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Mr. Schreiber.
Before we adjourn tonight.
Mr. President, that's all we have for planning and zoning.
Thank you, Chairman Ranke.
And I apologize because I forgot to bring this up earlier. I had a resident call me and once again compliment our police department. So I would appreciate if you would pass this down, whatever it is you do over there. She and her husband had come home from a long trip. They had been driving like 8 or 10 hours. They could not get into their house. They discovered that, or they suspected that perhaps they had called the police. The police didn't want to break the sliding glass door, yada, yada, yada. They finally assumed that it was because the alarm on the garage, the punch-in alarm, the battery had gone dead. The police went to the store, bought a battery, came back, put it in, punched in the number, and whoop, went the garage door. To say the least, these people are your friends forever, forever. And I wouldn't be surprised if you get at least 10 dozen cookies out of this one. But thank you. You have no idea. You just really have no idea. Not being responsible for what the police do all the time. Thank goodness. In some cases, too bad in others. When a resident calls and gives such high praise to the police department, boy, that just gets, it just really gets me. Thank you very much, and thank you to the officers that helped them out.
Well done.
How nice is it to have a police department that does that sort of thing for the resident?
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You won't get that in Texas. No, you With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Trustee Ranke, second by Trustee Kammer. The clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Aaron's?
Yes.
Kammer?
Yes.
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Daney? Yes. Hopkins?
Yes.
Ranke?
Yes.
We are adjourned.